Your prayer is already answered. Claim it now. Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when the soul grows tired of waiting, tired of hoping, tired of asking, tired of wondering whether heaven has heard the cry whispered in the quiet hours of the night. We live in a world that teaches us to chase answers, to beg for breakthroughs, and to believe that blessings must be earned through endless struggle. And so we pray, yet we keep looking around, measuring time, watching circumstances, and questioning whether anything is truly happening. But tonight I invite you to pause, because what you are about to hear may completely change the way you understand prayer, faith, and divine timing. So many people believe that prayer is an act of desperation, a last resort when all human effort has failed. They imagine prayer as a plea sent into the distance, uncertain if it will ever return. Yet the greatest truth that has been hidden in plain sight is this: prayer was never meant to be a request for something missing. Prayer is the recognition of something already fulfilled. From the moment a sincere desire rises within you, something sacred is already in motion. That desire did not come to tease you or to torment you. It came because its fulfillment already exists. Nothing enters your awareness without first being prepared for you. What you seek is not ahead of you. It is aligning itself with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the struggle has never been about whether God answers prayers. The real struggle has been about whether we can trust the answer before we see the evidence. We are conditioned to believe only what our eyes can confirm, yet faith calls us to see with the heart long before the world reflects it back to us. This is where most people stumble, not because they lack belief, but because they abandon it too soon. Every delay, every silence, every moment that seems empty is often misunderstood. What appears as stillness is not absence. It is preparation. What feels like waiting is actually alignment taking place beneath the surface. Just as a seed grows in darkness before it ever breaks the soil, so too do answered prayers take form in unseen ways. Today is not about learning how to pray harder or longer. It is about learning how to stand in the certainty that your prayer has already been answered. It is about shifting from pleading to claiming, from hoping to knowing, from waiting to receiving. As we move forward, allow your heart to be open, not to possibility, but to certainty. Because the truth is simple, powerful, and life-changing. When prayer is understood correctly, doubt dissolves, fear loses its grip, and peace takes its place. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have been waiting for has been waiting for you. Prayer is not the act of convincing God to act on your behalf. It is not a repeated plea, a desperate cry, or a negotiation with heaven. Prayer, in its highest and purest form, is acceptance. It is the moment you recognize that what you desire is not missing, delayed, or withheld. It is already complete in the unseen. The moment you truly understand this, your entire relationship with prayer changes. Most people remain stuck because they approach prayer from a place of lack. They pray because they feel empty. They pray because they feel powerless. They pray because circumstances appear overwhelming. But praying from lack only reinforces lack. You cannot receive fullness while standing in emptiness. True prayer begins only when the mind shifts from "I don't have" to "it is done." When you accept that prayer is acceptance, you stop trying to make something happen. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop measuring time. You stop watching for signs with anxiety. Acceptance is calm. Acceptance is quiet. Acceptance is confident. It does not need reassurance because it knows. This is why many prayers seem unanswered, not because God ignored them, but because the one praying never accepted the answer. They asked, but they did not receive inwardly. They spoke the words, but they did not assume fulfillment. And without assumption, prayer remains incomplete. Acceptance means you agree with the outcome before it appears. You mentally occupy the state of the wish fulfilled. You live from the end, not toward it. This is not imagination for entertainment. It is imagination for entertainment. It is imagination as reality's blueprint. Everything that appears in your world must first be accepted internally. The outer world does not create, it reflects. When prayer is reduced to asking, it keeps you waiting. When prayer becomes acceptance, waiting ends. You no longer ask, when will it happen? Because internally it already has. Time only becomes relevant to the mind that doubts. Faith has no clock. Acceptance also requires letting go of control. Many people pray but secretly dictate how the answer should arrive. They limit the form, the timing, and the method. Yet the moment you accept the answer, you release the need to control the process. You trust that intelligence far greater than your reasoning is arranging everything perfectly. This is why peace is a sign of true prayer, not excitement, not emotional highs. Peace. A deep inner stillness that says, I know. When peace replaces urgency, acceptance has occurred. When urgency remains, prayer has not yet finished. To accept is to stop repeating the same request. Repetition after acceptance is doubt disguised as devotion. If you truly believed something was done, you would not keep asking for it. You would move forward differently. Your thoughts would change. Your conversations would shift. Your expectations would align. Acceptance also changes how you respond to circumstances. Challenges no longer shake you the same way. Delays no longer create panic. Silence no longer feels like rejection. You understand that the unseen moves first, and the visible always follows. This is not passive thinking. Acceptance is not pretending or ignoring reality. It is choosing which reality you agree with, the current appearance or the fulfilled promise. You cannot serve both. You must decide which one has authority in your mind. When you accept the answered prayer, you no longer react emotionally to temporary appearances. You respond with calm authority. You stop explaining your situation to everyone. You stop defending your faith. You stop seeking validation. You simply know. Acceptance also requires self-alignment. You cannot accept abundance while seeing yourself as unworthy. You cannot accept love while identifying as rejected. You cannot accept peace while constantly rehearsing fear. The acceptance of the answer must include the acceptance of yourself as the one who receives it. This is where transformation happens. Prayer changes you before it changes circumstances. It reshapes your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone hoping for a breakthrough, but as someone preparing for responsibility. You begin to act in quiet alignment with the outcome, not in frantic anticipation. Many people struggle here because acceptance demands trust without proof. It demands that you walk forward without external confirmation. It asks you to rest before results arrive. And the mind resists this because it has been trained to believe only what it can see. But the greatest truths have never required evidence first. They require conviction. Conviction precedes manifestation. Acceptance is conviction made permanent. The moment you accept the answered prayer, you also stop asking why questions. Why hasn't it happened? Why is it taking so long? Why did this go wrong? These questions keep you tied to the past and the problem. Acceptance keeps you anchored in the outcome. You begin to understand that nothing is wasted. Every delay, every challenge, every detour is serving alignment. Nothing is random, nothing is punishment. Everything is preparation. Acceptance also sharpens discernment. You become less distracted. You stop chasing alternatives. You recognize what no longer aligns and walk away without regret. When you know the answer is already secured, you don't settle for substitutes. This state of acceptance is powerful because it is non-resistant. Resistance slows manifestation. Acceptance removes friction. The path clears because you are no longer fighting reality. You are directing it from within. And here is the subtle truth most never realize. Acceptance is gratitude in advance. Not forced gratitude, but natural appreciation that flows from certainty. Gratitude is not a technique, it is a consequence of acceptance. When you accept, gratitude arises effortlessly. You don't thank God hoping to receive, thank God because you know you already have. This gratitude is not emotional. It is grounded. It is stable. It is unwavering. Acceptance also frees you from comparison. You stop watching others receive what you desire and wondering when it will be your turn. You understand that fulfillment is personal and precise. No one can take what is already assigned to you. This is why acceptance must be guarded. Doubt tries to re-enter through conversations, social media, opinions, and appearances. You must protect the inner agreement you made during prayer. What you accept inwardly must not be overturned by external noise. When doubt appears, you do not fight it emotionally. You return to acceptance. You remind yourself that prayer was completed the moment you agreed with the answer. You do not renegotiate. You stand firm. Acceptance does not mean the journey is effortless. It means the destination is settled. There may be movement, shifts, and adjustments, but the outcome is not in question. Once prayer becomes acceptance, fear loses authority. Anxiety fades. Pressure dissolves. You no longer feel rushed because you are no longer chasing. You are allowing, and allowing is the highest form of faith. Prayer ends the moment acceptance begins. Everything after that is alignment. What you call delay is rarely what you think it is. The human mind interprets time through impatience, emotion, and visible proof, but divine movement does not operate on emotional urgency. Delay is not denial. It is alignment in motion. The moment you understand this, waiting stops feeling like punishment and starts revealing itself as purpose. Most people assume that if something does not arrive quickly, it must not be meant for them. They measure truth by speed. They equate silence with rejection. But silence is often the loudest confirmation that something significant is being prepared. Nothing valuable arrives casually. Nothing eternal moves carelessly. What matters most is always arranged with precision. Alignment requires movement often unseen, often misunderstood. When you prayed, the answer did not stall. It began reorganizing reality. People had to shift. Circumstances had to dissolve. Patterns had to break. Old versions of you had to be released. None of this happens instantly without consequence. Timing protects you from receiving something you are not yet ready to sustain. Delay exposes attachment. It reveals where faith is conditional and where trust is shallow. If peace disappears the moment time stretches, then belief was anchored to outcome, not truth. Alignment teaches endurance. It trains you to remain steady without reassurance. It strengthens the inner posture required to hold what you asked for. Nothing comes to you unchanged. What you receive must match who you unchanged. What you receive must match who you are becoming. Delay exists to refine identity. You cannot step into new dimensions of life, carrying outdated perceptions, habits, and expectations. The waiting period removes what no longer fits. It is not empty time, it is transformational time. Most breakdowns during delay happen because people assume something has gone wrong. They interpret obstacles as opposition rather than adjustment. But obstacles are often signals that redirection is occurring. What feels like resistance is frequently correction. What feels like loss is often protection. If everything happened immediately, growth would be optional. But alignment requires expansion, and expansion is uncomfortable. It stretches belief. It challenges dependency. It removes crutches. It forces you to rely on inner certainty instead of external confirmation. Delay is where character is shaped, not because God needs to test you, but because the outcome requires a different version of you. The blessing is not separate from the becoming. You are not waiting for the answer. You are growing into it. Alignment also works through subtraction. Certain doors must close because they would trap you at a level beneath your prayer. Certain people must exit because they cannot operate in the environment you are entering. Certain habits must end because they conflict with the responsibility of what you asked for. Delay allows these removals to happen gradually, mercifully, and effectively. When alignment is in motion, things may appear to get worse before they get better. This is not regression, it is rearrangement. Systems collapse to make room for new structures. Old supports fall away so stronger foundations can be built. If you misinterpret this stage, you may quit right before completion. Delay also reveals motivation. Are you committed to the outcome or addicted to the timeline? Are you trusting wisdom or demanding control? Alignment requires surrender of how and when. The moment you release the need to manage the process, resistance dissolves. Timing is never random. What arrives early becomes a burden. What arrives late loses impact. But what arrives at the appointed moment transforms everything it touches. That moment is chosen not by urgency, but by readiness. Readiness is not about perfection. It is about posture. Can you receive without fear? Can you sustain without sabotage? Can you steward without insecurity? Delay ensures that when the answer arrives, it will not destroy what it was meant to bless. Alignment also synchronizes multiple layers of reality. You may be ready internally, but others involved may not be. Systems must align. Conditions must converge. Paths must intersect at the precise moment. What looks like waiting is coordination happening beyond your awareness. If you interrupt alignment by forcing outcomes, you create short-term results with long-term consequences. Many people rush into what they prayed for and later wish they had waited. Delay saves you from regret disguised as success. During alignment, intuition sharpens. Discernment increases. You begin to sense when something is off and when something is right. This clarity is not accidental, it is necessary. What you are stepping into requires wisdom, not just desire. Alignment also tests consistency. Can you remain faithful without feedback? Can you continue living from the end when nothing confirms it? Can you maintain inner agreement despite external contradiction? These are not punishments, they are preparations. The most dangerous belief during delay is that nothing is happening. Something is always happening. Stillness is not stagnation. Silence is not absence. Invisibility does not mean inactivity. Roots grow in darkness long before fruit appears. Delay trains you to detach from appearances. When you stop reacting emotionally to what you see, you gain authority over what manifests. Emotional reactions pull you back into the present limitation. Calm expectation keeps you aligned with the outcome. Alignment also deepens humility. You realize that outcomes are not earned through effort alone. They are received through cooperation. This dissolves pride and replaces it with trust. You stop striving and start allowing. As alignment progresses, impatience fades. Not because the desire disappears, but because certainty replaces urgency. You know it is coming, so you no longer chase it. This inner rest is a sign that alignment is nearly complete. Delay teaches you to value process. Without process, results are shallow. Without formation, fulfillment is fragile. What arrives without preparation leaves as quickly as it came. Alignment ensures permanence. When you understand delay correctly, gratitude replaces frustration. You begin to thank the waiting period for what it taught you, removed from you, and added to you. You recognize that the delay was not keeping you from your future. It was escorting you into it. Nothing has gone wrong. Nothing has been forgotten. Nothing has been denied. What you prayed for is moving toward you with precision, wisdom, and purpose. Alignment does not rush. It arrives exactly when everything is ready, including you. Faith is not a reaction to proof. It is the cause of proof. It does not wait for circumstances to change before it believes. It believes first, and circumstances rearrange themselves afterward. This is the order that governs all creation. Evidence never comes before faith, it follows it. Most people misunderstand faith because they confuse it with hope. Hope says, maybe it will happen. Faith says, it is already so. Hope looks forward with uncertainty. Faith stands present with certainty. Hope depends on external validation. Faith operates independently of appearances. This is why faith feels uncomfortable at first. It requires you to stand in truth without support from the senses. It asks you to trust what cannot yet be measured, touched, or confirmed, and the mind resists this because it has been trained to rely on what is visible. But visibility has never been the source of reality. Consciousness is. Faith is inner agreement. It is the decision to treat the unseen as settled fact. Once that agreement is made, reality has no choice but to comply. The world you experience is not responding to what you want. It is responding to what you believe to be true. Evidence always lags behind belief. It must, because the outer world is an echo, not a voice. It repeats what has already been assumed inwardly. Waiting for evidence before believing is like waiting for an echo before speaking. It reverses the natural order. This is where most prayers collapse. People pray sincerely, but then they immediately return to watching, measuring, checking, and doubting. They say they believe, but their attention remains fixed on what hasn't changed. And attention is agreement. What you consistently observe with emotion is what you confirm as real. Faith requires a shift of focus, not denial of circumstances, but withdrawal of authority from them. Circumstances are effects, not causes. They are reports from the past, not indicators of the future. When you treat them as final, you imprison yourself in yesterday. True faith is calm. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not argue or defend itself. It simply knows. That knowing is not emotional excitement. It is inner stillness. When faith is present, urgency disappears because urgency belongs to uncertainty. Faith also demands consistency. It is not something you activate once and abandon when nothing happens quickly. It is a state you return to again and again until it becomes natural. In the beginning, faith is chosen. Later, it becomes identity. The challenge is that faith contradicts sensory information. You may feel sick while believing in health. You may feel lonely while believing in connection. You may see lack while believing in abundance. Faith does not deny these experiences, it refuses to accept them as final. This refusal is not stubbornness, it is alignment. You are choosing which reality governs your inner world, and the inner world always wins, because it is the source. Faith also requires emotional discipline. Emotional reactions to appearances weaken faith because they pull you back into agreement with the problem. When fear, frustration, or disappointment take over, they signal that attention has shifted from truth to illusion. This does not mean you suppress emotion. It means you do not let emotion decide what is real. Feelings are responses, not authorities. They change when belief changes. Faith becomes stronger when you stop asking, "Is it working?" That question comes from doubt. Faith already knows the answer. The moment you stop monitoring progress, progress accelerates. Monitoring is a form of mistrust. Another misunderstanding is that faith must feel powerful all the time. It does not. Sometimes faith feels quiet. Sometimes it feels ordinary. Sometimes it feels ordinary. There's nothing at all. But faith is not measured by sensation. It is measured by direction. Where does your mind return when it wanders? What assumption do you come back to? Faith is also revealed by how you speak when no one is listening. Your inner dialogue is the clearest indicator of belief. If your private thoughts contradict your prayer, faith has not yet taken root. When faith is active, language changes. You stop saying if and start saying when. You stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios and begin expecting resolution. You stop preparing for disappointment and begin preparing for responsibility. Faith also alters patience. You no longer rush outcomes because you trust the process. You understand that what is unfolding is doing so intelligently. You stop interfering. Interference delays fulfillment because it introduces resistance. Resistance comes from fear of disappointment. Faith dissolves this fear because it removes uncertainty. You are no longer gambling on the future. You are standing in certainty now. Faith does not require blind optimism. It requires alignment with truth. Truth is not what appears. It is what has been decided internally. Once decided, the outcome is sealed. This is why faith must be guarded. Conversations, media opinions, and even well-meaning advice can introduce doubt. Faith is not fragile, but it must be protected until it stabilizes. You do not expose a seed to harsh conditions before it takes root. As faith deepens, you stop seeking signs. Signs follow. They do not lead. When you chase signs, you imply absence. When you rest in faith, signs appear naturally. Faith also brings rest, not inactivity, but inner rest. You still act, but your actions are guided, not frantic. You move from clarity, not pressure. This kind of action is effective because it flows from certainty. Eventually, faith becomes self-sustaining. You no longer struggle to believe. Doubt loses influence. The mind settles. And then evidence begins to surface, not all at once, but progressively. Small confirmations appear. Patterns shift. Opportunities align. People respond differently. But by the time evidence arrives, it no longer surprises you. It feels familiar. It feels inevitable. Because faith has already lived there. This is the paradox. The strongest faith is often invisible. Others may not see it. They may question it. They may misunderstand your calm. But faith does not need witnesses. It only needs agreement. Faith is not about forcing belief. It is about choosing where you stand. You stand with truth before truth becomes visible. You stand with fulfillment before fulfillment takes form. You stand with certainty before certainty is confirmed. And when faith becomes your evidence, evidence has no choice but to follow.